I encourage people who are just starting dealing with hemp and they want to combine, as we saw, start with the short type varieties. Why? Because you, as we said, you don't want to have to suffer these problems, particularly if you're a newcomer to hemp production. You will be having lots of problems. We have very many farmers who are very familiar with growing staple crops, you know, canola, wheats, you know, soybean pulses, and you name it. And if they apply the same set of rules and the same approach as they do to staple crops, and they try to grow hemp, they fail miserably, primarily because they will be having lots of ropey material on their combines.
What are the problems and what's holding us back? Again, I want to emphasize that problems can also be opportunities. Just because they're problems now doesn't mean that there'll be problems always. So what we have first is codes, building codes. Getting hempcrete projects permitted in the United States is really challenging. Every county that we work in, people that we consult for, we're essentially having the same conversation over and over and over again. What we're doing is we're explaining to a building department, to a planning department, we're explaining them what the material is and how we're using it. What is it? It's an insulator. It's non-structural and it's cast around a structural frame. It's fireproof, resistant to pests, termites, mold.
Minimum seed size, moisture content, purity, so that's how much trash is in from the combine or not. Sclerotinia, okay, that's a mold. These are all things that have to be measured, and there's thresholds, and you better be below it or it's not going to work, or somebody's going to have to pay twice for it. Evidence of rodent infestation, feces, and evidence of other animals eating on the seeds. What's the THC content? That's fine if you're growing some kinds of cannabis. It's not so good if you're wanting to put hemp hearts on the market. The aerobic colony count, coliforms, yeasts, mold, bacteria, E. coli, salmonella, staphylococcus, gluten, peroxide, that's a measure of stability, okay? So that is that's kind of a minimum list of things that are going to be tested and documentation that's going to follow.
I come from the aerospace industry where we use fibers to support structural type fibers that carry high loads. The types of fibers that hemp is currently being used for are short fibers that are using to just reinforce other materials. We're talking about load-bearing fibers when we talk about fibers, and I personally think, as do my colleagues, this is the real value of the hemp plant because it can compete with fiberglass. It can compete with glass fibers. And so that gives us a sustainable material that we can get high performance out of.
And creating this hemp economy and generating hemp markets and supply chains, we need to obviously test this product. Testing is essential. And so we need to kind of figure out what this is going to be. What is an appropriate model for testing for potency and for safety?
My background basically is I've been working in diabetes, cancer, and HIV and Ebola research, and I develop methods to determine what is the Achilles heel in those diseases, what's the weakness, and then try to develop drugs and therapies for it. So I'm very interested in the cannabis play because this plant has been medicinal for many, 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 many years and been part of humanity. Our response to the plant is something that is not really very advertised. You don't hear a lot of discussion about it, but we have a cannabis system in us that we've had ever since we became a species. And so we respond to the plant through that endocannabinoid system, and I'll address that. And then I think there's an industrial responsibility, which I am so impressed that everyone has embraced that for testing product, not only for potency in medicines, but also for what kind of product quality, building materials and things. This is a responsibility, and if we do this right, we will lead the conversation in the nation and around the world.